A very good afternoon, Bhantes. Welcome to the Buddhist Maha Vihara's Dhamma Dana Series, and this is the second of the two series that we've had, and this is the dialogue sessions. And we are also very pleased and honored to have two very erudite and very senior monks with us in these dialogue sessions. Basically, these dialogue sessions are informal discussions about topics which are contemporary in nature and also very interesting, and I think most devotees would like to know or have answers to. So the topics today we are going to discuss basically on a broader scale. It's called Buddhist trends, or trends that Buddhism will be facing in the future. And also currently the main topic is, which is better, Western Buddhism or Eastern Buddhism? We have put that question to these two very erudite monks, and let me just quickly introduce both of them. Sitting closest to me is Bhante Madhavela, Dr. Madhavela Silavimala Naika Thera, who is currently the president of the American Buddhist Seminary and in Sacramento in California. And on the far left is Bhante Deegalle Mahinda Thera, who is actually the Professorial Research Associate at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, and a visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge, and a Professor Emeritus in Religions, Philosophies and Ethics at Bard Spa University in the UK. Now, both these monks or monastics were actually trained in Sri Lanka, and they have traveled widely and now are based in the West. Bhante Silavimala is in the US and Bhante Mahinda is in the UK. But because of their training in Sri Lanka, which is of Eastern nature, let's put this question to them and let's hear their views on which Buddhism is better, Eastern Buddhism or Western Buddhism. Now, Eastern Buddhism, as we know, is steeped generally in a lot of rituals and pujas, and faith-based type of practices. Whereas in the West, I'm sure most of us or think we know, is basically based on meditation and philosophy and practice of mind control, mindfulness, and those kind of ideas. So let's hear it from Bhante. Let's say Bhante Silavimala, who's in the US. Bhante, what are your thoughts on which type of Buddhism is, what shall we say, popular or important or relevant in this modern day and age? Your thoughts, please, Bhante.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie Tilak. Thank you for inviting us to this dialogue. When I first heard about the topic, I thought we can rearrange the words of the topic to make it easier for us to understand and talk about. Which Buddhism is better, Eastern Buddhism and Western Buddhism, but it is very hard to separate Buddhism as Eastern and Western. We used to call sometimes Chinese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, or Indian Buddhism or Sri Lankan Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, like that. But Eastern and Western Buddhism is not easy to separate like that, because in the West, Buddhism is a mix of all these ethnic Buddhist practices. When I mention ethnic Buddhist practices, is that Buddha's teaching was pure principles of human existence, and how to use those principles to make our life easier and better. And that is the basic Buddhist teaching, Buddha's teaching. But when it went to China, when it went to Korea, when it went to Sri Lanka, the conditions of those countries, cultural conditions and historical conditions, and weather conditions and all those conditions influenced the Buddha's teaching in those different places and took a certain appearance. But basic practices and basic Dharma is exactly the same. Now, Western Buddhism is not like that. Western countries, Buddhism has arrived from all different directions. For example, in America, first Buddhism came from Japanese tradition, and slowly Chinese tradition, and then slowly Eastern tradition like Sri Lankan and other Buddhist countries. And after that, Thai culture, Thai Buddhism arrived, and after that Korean Buddhism slowly arrived. And it's a mixture of all different Buddhist traditions, not Buddhism itself. But if you think of England, I think he will talk about that side. In the West, even in Buddhism in England and Buddhism in Germany, is always a mixture of all different Buddhist cultures. Tibetan Buddhism, for example, is a very forcefully entering into West and entering into other countries. And so those are dominating cultural aspect of Buddhism in the West. So there's no such a thing called one Western Buddhism. It's a mixture of all Buddhist traditions. And therefore, in the Eastern culture, we have the effort to extract Dharma from the cultural aspect that started like last 30, 40 years. We were trying hard all the teachers were trying hard to bring out the pure essence of Buddhism and separate the culture. So that with that note, I transfer the mic to Venerable Mahinda, so he might have to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable, and thank you, Mr. Leslie, organizing this discussion. I think Venerable Silimala has already pointed out this ethnic dimension, and in the United States, yes, ethnic dimension is very visible, and even in Europe it's the case. But I think important point we have to think about it or consider is the colonial context. In particular the British Empire. The British encounter with Sri Lankan Buddhism, Indian or Burmese Buddhism had a significant impact in the shaping the knowledge about Buddhism. Starting from Victorian times, even earlier, very seriously Victorian times, the Buddhist ideas penetrated into Western thinking, in particular British thinking, English thinking, and we note here 1881. Rhys Davids, who served in Sri Lanka about 8 years as a civil servant, after returning to England, founded the Politics Society. Now, Politics Society is the Ivy League club of Buddhist scholars, and still the canon that they produce, which you call Politics Society, is the standard in learning Buddhism. So, because of that emphasis, I think continental Buddhism, Buddhism in Europe, Germany, France, Italy, and United Kingdom, if we take it, United Kingdom had a very strong exposure to Theravada Buddhism starting 1925 with the Anagarika Dharmapala's establishment of the London Buddhist Vihara, which invited the first monks 1928. Actually, it's the same year that 5 monks came to this temple also, from Sri Lanka, 1928. And same year, the monks, Venerable Vajrayana, I think, Parvar Vajrayana and others went to England. So that's the kind of the climax, the most important point, that Theravada monks come in to the West and also to Far East, to Malaysia. I think if you think about from Sri Lanka, this is the Far East Malaysia, and expansion of Theravada, Theravada form of Buddhism. Of course, then this is the relation to British colonialism, and then if you think about French colonialism, French occupation of East Asian countries, Indochina, Cambodia, Vietnam, and so on, that had influx of Mahayana Buddhism. And also we have to remember, earlier, like Hegel days, actually, Chinese Buddhism was the inspiration. Before the Cultural Revolution, Hegel himself refers to Pure Land Buddhism, and early writings you can see Chinese influence in the West. And I think Eugen Burnouf, who was in Paris, in University of Paris, and he translated the Lotus Sutra, the first text to be translated from Mahayana tradition. And then first Theravada Buddhist text is actually come from Denmark, Dhammapada translated into Latin. So around that time. So by the end of 1800, like 1900, when it reached that, then we had within 25 years, significant amount of Pali materials, some Chinese materials, and to some extent some Japanese material came, I think, to the Europe, Germany and so on, and scholars' professorships were established. Like first professorship, I think, came in University of Manchester, I think, around 1910 or something, for Rhys Davies to teach as a professor of Pali. And so it's a kind of interesting phenomenon. But anyway, by 1900, in Europe, it's well-established Buddhism in some ways as a scholarly path. And I think in the United States, I think World War II, of course there were Chinese and Japanese before the World War II, but after World War II, I think the Americans were exposed more to both Japanese Buddhism because of the American occupation of Japan, and also the Vietnam War. Vietnam War resulted influx of Vietnamese refugees to United States, but also to France and Canada and so on. So these are important phenomena. And then 1980s, with the Nobel Prize that awarded to Dalai Lama, Western imagination was reached its climax. So I think the Tibetan Buddhism was able to reach higher level of political leadership. Like, for example, Sarkozy, President Sarkozy's wife, for example, is a Buddhist.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, she is practicing Buddhist in France, and things like that. So these are kind of now. I would say when we call Western Buddhism, I think Buddhism has remained middle class, kind of
attractive to the middle class.
Attractive to middle class, and it's still, I think, remain middle class. I think in many society. But only exception is, I think, like Nichiren school, like Sokagakkai. They are able to penetrate into working classes and underclasses and so on, both in the United States and in England. So they have been able to convert the black people and so on. But if you think about 20th century, especially World War II, intellectuals in Britain were attracted to Buddhism, and mostly judges and so on, but they are more upper class or middle class, white middle class, predominantly privileged group. But now I think really Buddhism is getting grounded on the ground to the working classes, and actually we can call it American Buddhism. Rather than Western Buddhism, we can talk about American Buddhism or British Buddhism or French Buddhism, because now it's planted and growing.
Maybe can we just, since we're talking about Buddhism in the West, can we skew it to Theravada Buddhism in the UK and also in the US? The difficulties that Theravadan monks or monastics face in a Western environment, and is it difficult to actually preach and practice Buddhism in the UK or even in the US?
I think, I find actually the Western world had a very positive educational atmosphere to Buddhism. The universities, I think Buddhist studies is flourishing. And as you can...
Is that in the UK or is that in the US?
Even in America.
Yeah.
I mean, in America, probably the largest number of scholars in the world, if you take in numbers, the largest numbers of Buddhist scholars are in Japan and the United States, more than any other country in the world. And all forms of Buddhism. So now, American academy is very rich with scholarship of all varieties of Buddhism, as Venerable Sila mentioned, ethnic forms of Buddhism, non-ethnic forms of Buddhism, and also some Buddhist groups like Fo Guan Sha, Shelai Monastery, has even a university of its own called University of the West.
Yeah.
So this is a very positive development. I mean, it was not possible to imagine in the 20th century that Buddhist groups, whoever that may be, to establish a university. So, of course, Venerable Havampal Ratanasara Theru started a college of Buddhist Studies in Los Angeles, I think in 1980s, but it didn't lead to a university state, but this Taiwanese groups have been able to establish a university. So the Buddhist curriculum has entered to higher education in a very interesting way, faith-based. And so there, the distinction between Western Buddhism and Asian Buddhism kind of merged. So, Mahayana Buddhism in Taiwan has become American Buddhism, because students are all American students and American,
Yes,
they've
studied in the States and they've come back, and even especially in Vietnam, I think many of them graduated from American universities and come back and bring back a lot of American culture. And when they are there, they're basically ambassadors for Buddhism in America while they are students.
Yes, and also if you think about the training, suppose if you think about how you become assistant professor in the university setting, the training in the United States is very rigorous. Very, very serious universities, you won't be able to get a PhD less than 5 years, usually 5 to 15 years. And usually a PhD in Buddhism will involve learning Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese or Japanese, one of those 5 languages, plus reading ability of German or French. at least in Ivy League universities, good universities.
Yeah.
So the training as Buddhist space in America is perhaps the best because it gives you a broader spectrum of scholarship and also attempted to ground it on the language learning.
Yeah.
Of course, it may not be adequate from seen from local Asian perspective, but nevertheless, it's kind of embedded in you. So that means the quality of teaching, dissemination of knowledge in publications, besides the temples, have drastically changed the landscape of Buddhism, and also how Buddhism enter into films, poetry, literature, novels, and so on. You can see it in publications in Europe as well as in the United States. So Buddhism has become alive more than in Asian countries.
Oh, okay.
Because Asian countries do not tend to privilege the Buddhist situation.
We take it for granted sometimes because you're born a Buddhist and you live in a Buddhist country, so you just take it for granted. I think that's no
right.
efforts are made to actually do a practice or study further. Or
I would like to mention that Buddhism has always two sides, Vidya and Charana. Vidya means theory, Charana means practice. All these scholars read books and learn the text and teach the text. But there's no Charana. If there's no Charana, if there's no practice, how much theory, if it is there, Dharma does not function in that place.
That's right.
So it is very difficult for Americans to practice Dharma at the very beginning. For example, practice of dana, after 30, 40 years of our being there, especially Theravada Buddhism is there, has been there, the American people themselves didn't pick up the practice of dana.
They don't see a value in it? They don't see a value to that practice?
They have no deep understanding of the practice.
No sense of charity.
No. They have the sense of charity, but
way.
not the way that helping the needy, helping the poor, that kind of attitude, offering for the Buddha, offering for the Sangha, offering for the temple, that they don't have.
Yeah, I have a
Even
kind of
after.
interesting point to add to Venerable Sila Vimala.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the Ajahn Sumedho's tradition in Amaravati in London, Hemel Hempstead, and there the white English people come to do meditation.
Yeah.
They come
Primarily they come for that.
to meditation and discussion.
They very rarely offer food to the Sangha.
And Thai people and the Sri Lankan people bring food.
They are the one who maintain the temple.
Yeah.
Sri Lankans and Thais. And Western Buddhism, all Asians are the one who is supporting the Buddhism.
Material support.
Now, even in
That's
United
also because
States.
of the cultural aspects from where they come from. That is a normal accepted practice.
No. Reason is that Buddhism has been there in China and Vietnam and our countries, Sri Lanka and all the Thailand. And after 2000 some years, they have been deeply understanding the value of the practice of dana and sila and meditation.
See, the path is usually dana kata, sila kata, sagga kata. So Theravada tradition say that we practice the charity first, and then the sila, and then so on. There's a gradual process.
Dana sila bhavana.
Dana sila bhavana.
That process.
Yeah. The scholars never know what dana is.
Yeah.
Scholars never know what sila means.
Yeah.
And they all drink and gamble and all the other kinds of things. There are no very seriously practicing Buddhist scholar who practice Dhamma.
Yeah. I think there's exception here. Some of the Tibetan scholars, some of the Tibetan scholars in America, kind of a little bit exception. I mean, I agree with Venerable Sirim Leslie.
There's one exception.
Yeah, one exception.
In America.
Yeah. America, majority of the scholars who are working on Tibetan Buddhism seems to have grasped the importance of Tibetan tradition of like precepts and charity. And I remember one day I was going to American Academy of Religion conference. One of the senior professors came and say, "Bhante, may I pay for you?" Kind of like that. That means somehow scholars who are exposed to Tibetan Buddhism seem to have acquired.
So when you say scholars, they are Tibetans or
they are white scholars.
White scholars.
White scholars, but who are more tuned to Tibetan practice.
Right.
So I think the word.
Even Sri Lankan Buddhist scholars don't seem to practice Dharma. So therefore, the scholars only maintain the text and make it easier for people to read and understand, but other than that, there's contribution from the scholarly side is very limited.
So when you say scholarly, are you referring
for
to
example,
monastics?
I give you another example, that I have been there now 46 years. Until about 10 years ago, that means almost 35 years, I never talk about precepts to the Westerners. No point.
No point.
No point. You are disappointing
Disappointing them.
Western audience.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about precept. Precepts is not for us. Precepts is for monks. We don't want precept. That's how the attitude. But now, last 10, 15 years, I have been emphasizing the practice of Sila and talk about the value and explain the meaning of Sila. Sila means being nice, a good person. But they thought Sila means rules and to take our freedom away.
It's like commandments in Christianity.
Yeah, that's the attitude they had.
Yeah, and also here we have to remember, like in Asian traditions, like here I'm thinking about Sri Lanka, Thailand or Burma, always say if you want to meditate, at least you should have 5 precepts as the ground.
Yeah.
But like, suppose that if you do mindful practice or vipassana in the Western world, that part is not there, even in Zen, that the precept requirement is not highlighted. So you just go to meditation. So I think it's related to what earlier when Silam mentioned, I think.
What I think is that we in Sri Lanka or Thailand or these countries, especially Chinese here, for example, it is in their blood for last 2000 years, giving and even trying to follow 5 precepts as much as they can. So the time factor is very important even in the Western world. When, for example, I told you that last 35 some years, I didn't talk about Buddhism. Now I am talk about precepts, right? And that means we are gradually getting to the point that practice of Dharma is not just learning, not learning the text. Yeah, that is what they are learning. But it takes time.
Yeah.
Even in England, only one small area, they put little food into the monk's bowl. That is Westerners, right? But it didn't pick up for the nation. In England, there's no knowledge of dana.
Yeah.
But Thailand or other countries, it's so common.
Yeah.
The monks are coming early in the morning, and this is our turn to offer food, offer a little dollar or something in the bowl, and something like that. They have been doing it for 1,000 years, and it is in their blood, and it's there in the culture.
Cultural practices.
Even the little children know that.
I want to note here, a few years ago, they did, they do it every year. Myanmar came number 1 in the world in the charity index. Number 1 in the world, far ahead of all the countries. That means, like when Bhante Silumala says that not only the rich people or pious people, everybody in the society
Yeah, they give gold.
Give away.
They take the gold and put it into build the temple.
Yeah.
Give away. So this is quite interesting.
Even Sri Lanka don't have that kind of devotion for dana, you know. So it takes time, but slowly it is happening, and all these different Buddhist cultures come from different ethnic backgrounds. It is hard for Westerners to understand the culture. So the Chinese Buddhists emphasize the Chinese culture. Sri Lankan Buddhists emphasize the Sri Lankan culture. But what we really need to do is to take the essence of the Buddha's teaching and how you make that practical for that particular community, that particular ethnic group. So that is what we need to do.
I think there are 2 reasons here. One, as a scholar, I think, because when we think about Western world, like United States and Europe, they are capitalist societies. And now in capitalist societies, we are programmed to accumulate. So that means giving is counterproductive. So that may be one of the reasons that they are not giving. And the other thing is, they may think that monks are not essential and the monastic institutions are not essential to be supported. And so that may be one of the reasons that they are not given. Whereas in Asia, whether it's Mahayana or Theravada, they think that the integral part of the tradition is the monks and the nuns, because they are the custodians of the tradition, and they feel obligated to support them in every way possible. I think the kind of my explanation, but there may be more to add to it.
In the West, they are used to immediate result.
Yeah.
When you practice dana, when you practice sila, they don't see immediate result. But when you practice meditation, they say, my stress is gone, I am more peaceful. They can see it immediately. So that is why they are attracted to meditation than dana and sila.
Instant results.
Yeah, and also it's not as a religious point of view.
Yeah.
As the teachers of Dharma in those countries, what we have to prove to them is that dana has immediate result. Sila has immediate result. If as a husband you are following 5 precepts, you know that it's much easier for you to get along with your wife and children. And we have to show it to them. Unless we show it to them, they don't see it.
Right.
So therefore, it's very important that when you practice dana and sila, you have the immediate gratification right there. That is our job as teachers in this country.
To show the way.
In the Western world.
It's got a practical aspect to it rather than just theoretical teachings.
And this will be the problem in future. Like say, for example, now the Buddhist temples are supported by the Asian communities, like Sri Lankan community and Thai community. Now they are recent migrants. Now, they are the ones who arrived at this country. Now their second generation and third generation do not have the same worldview. So maybe in 50 years' time there will be a question, who will make the donations to the temple? Who will provide the food to the monks? This question, I think.
If the ethnic children don't learn from their parents, you cannot expect Caucasian and American regular Western people
to come forth
would pick it up. No, it won't happen.
So that could be an issue for in the West actually.
So the temples will be closed down. A lot of churches are being closing down. Because they are not practicing.
Yeah, so again, the relevance of monasteries in the West as opposed to monasteries in the East will be detrimental for them eventually over time, I think, as you say, Bhante. So which people don't see value in what is being taught, and at the end of the day, people just turn away, don't turn up at all.
Yeah.
Because I was just reading a book, this particular book here on Buddhist trends in the future. One of the writers of the essay said that if Buddhist monastics or teachers, not even lay teachers, don't make themselves relevant in society, that's the end of the teachings.
Yeah.
So right now, issues like climate change, environmental pollution, social unrest, mental disturbances, sexual problems are not addressed by the teachers. You become irrelevant to the lay devotee.
And also the generation will question the authority of the monastics. And because, if you think about the development of the, internet and AI, the knowledge is at your fingertips.
Available online, anytime.
Yeah, and also the chanting, a lot of chanting are there. And then you will ask why we need a monk or why we need a nun to perform a ritual, because we could do it by ourselves by playing it. It will be cheaper and we don't have to be bothered. And like that, people will come to that situation. So that I think in the traditional societies, the monks and nuns are the ones who deposit the knowledge, preserve the knowledge, and share the knowledge, and keep the knowledge to the future. That I think gradually is taken away by
eroded,
and so the less relevant. And even our dress sometimes is a problem, because our dress usually do not fit to any of these societies,
But I thought the monks' robes are, universal. You can use it in any geographical location, any temperature, any weather, it's multi-purpose, right?
No, that has two sides to it. One side is that when Buddhist monks meditate and try to teach meditation, people have the tendency to think that meditation and all the other Buddhist practices are for Buddhist monks, not for us, lay people. But if the lay teachers go out and teach meditation, teach other things, and they have the tendency to listen to him more than a monk sometimes.
So the by association.
But after 50 some years, monks' image is getting popular as teachers who can contribute to the community, contribute to the society, contribute to the nation. So that is beginning to pick up. Like if you go to Taiwan, one senior monk give a talk, there are thousands and thousands of people in the audience. And in the West, if a monk is giving a talk, maybe except for Dalai Lama, so they don't have no interest. That is a monk stuff that he's talking.
Get the kind of perception that they are narrow. The views are narrow and they don't make relevant to lay people.
Not just narrow, but they're not used to that type of
discourses being expounded to masses. What you're saying is, in the West, if a monk speaks, he's basically speaking to an intellectual or something scholarly, which doesn't affect the layperson at all.
That has been broken now because of the internet and Facebook and what is the other one, YouTube and things like that. They are used to hearing the meaningful talks from the monks wearing robes, and then they pay attention, and then they think that these monks have something to offer. So it's picking up now, slowly. Now, even when we go out and give a talk, there will be a lot of more people at the university. Very rarely we get 2,000-3,000 people when we give a talk at the university. Yeah. Only Thich Nhat Hanh had made the name. At Stanford University, I invited him to give a talk, and he gave, there were hall full, the complete audience completely full.
Yeah.
But even for me, I didn't hear anything that is so forcefully said by Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. I didn't even hear the word sometimes, you know. But it's still popular because of the books.
No,
because of the books and also his charisma and because he teaches silence, kind of silent communication.
Dalai Lama
does the same.
Also has nothing too much to say that is deep according to the Buddha's teaching.
Yeah.
But whatever he says is interesting for the
It's
people.
well received.
He's got a charisma. People just get attracted
and also
to
he is very observant. Suppose if there's a monk, the monk may be far end, he rightly spotted. First, which country are you? You know, kind of like that he pointed out. So he quickly runs through the audience.
Scans the audience.
Yeah, and also pick up people and then he has a rapport.
Yeah.
And that's, he's able to say simple things and audience
That is
receives.
something like when Bodhidharma went to China, you know.
China, yeah.
That kind of charisma.
Yeah, charisma is important. for a
And then it filtered.
I think our late Venerable Kirindi Dhammananda probably may have had a similar charisma.
Yeah.
He's got the stature. You know,
But it
charisma.
still took long time for him
of
to
course.
reach the Chinese audience.
Yes. English speaking especially.
Takes time.
Takes time.
Yeah. But he definitely had that kind of appeal, I think.
Yeah.
The later part of his life, he was very charismatic in his presentations. And of course, he was also humorous, you know, which helps.
Humorous.
Helps.
That is why even someone like Ajahn Brahm is popular, not because the in-depth teaching, but the humor.
Easy to understand, makes it that even a lay person on a day-to-day basis can apply those little principles.
I think the interesting part is, in terms of relevance, I think like in the United States and even UK, what happened is that actually we haven't gone in the direction of welfare, because that's one way of make us relevant, like issues of homelessness, poverty, and social disturbance and so on. I think because there are some restrictions in our tradition, so we don't move it. But if in future probably, that's maybe the area
it's important to it.
That maybe the area we can penetrate into the society, show our relevance. And some groups like Nichiren, Soka Gakkai, they are doing it in some ways, reaching out. But I think maybe all Buddhists in future, to justify their existence, may have to take up those roles in their neighborhoods. And that may be the direction that Buddhism will be live and Buddhism will be acceptable by everybody and respected, I think.
Yeah. The one thing they have to know is that Buddhism is teaching, actually Dharma, not Buddhism. Dharma is something that can be practiced and gain result at each level, lowest level to highest level. Highest level is meditation on jhanas and things like that. But simple level is being kind to the people next to you and giving something in small level, and that knowledge has to be filtered into the Western society. But they think the same way about Christianity so far. Because Christianity has been there for a long, long time.
It's already entrenched in their Western culture. So for Buddhism, it takes a while to infiltrate.
I think we have the tradition, like Venerable Sila mentioned about this charity. Charity is there. So now the dana is only for the monks, but we have to expand it to a little bit further, the same dana
Society
concept.
at large.
Yeah, like once a month, kind of preparing 500 packets of rice and taking it somewhere, distributing homeless people, or feeding shelter, homeless shelter or something like that.
Yeah.
If you can incorporate it into our Buddhist organization, then the community come to know Dhamma more.
Yeah.
Like I know that in London, the Hare Krishna people, they go to supermarket, collect the vegetables and so on, they cook, and then they go everywhere and provide food. Like in front of the University of London, every day they come with the cooked food, and I see always students are lined up to get free food, very simple food, but then they don't tell anything about them or anything, they just give the food. But through food, people come to the religion. Yeah. Maybe Buddhists have to do something similar. It's like, kind of maybe open day, like once a month, inviting people.
I think Bhante Premaratana in Pittsburgh, he's got that program. I think once a month he takes his youths from the temple and they go and distribute to the homeless in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And I think Bhante Saranapala does it in Canada as well.
Yeah, because by that way you can take the Buddha's message to them. I remember when I was walking, I got lost on the very first day in the center of the city. Yeah. And I kind of near the market, I went to the homeless area. And I was a little bit scared, but there were a lot of people. Then one lady with a turban and so on, she started bowing down to me. She didn't recognize that I'm a Buddhist, perhaps because other Buddhists give donations to them. Yes. And she recognized him, started bowing down to me right at the...
But still... our people from Sri Lanka, has the inferiority complex about their practices. They think this is a lower level of practice of giving and asking for money for the temple. They never ask for the money for the temple building. And Cambodian people, for example, they always go out and say it loud that we need to build the temple and you all have to give donation and it's very important and I'm going to put $100 and so-and-so gave $100 and then we made $2,000 today. Our Sri Lankan people never say that.
We should promote it.
Yeah. Never promote
We should advertise a little bit loudly.
Loudly no, they're too shy. They're too shy.
Too shy.
Too shy. Too shy to...
That's something new.
Too shy to be a Buddhist in public.
That's news.
Yeah.
But that's a church strategy. The kind of, they adopted, that's what do in the church. After the mass,
they pass around.
Yeah, they pass and then also tell them, we send 10 missionaries to Africa, like that,
40 years in Sacramento temple, only one young boy, immediately after the service, he take a tray and go to everybody, collect money and put it in the donation box. One person. Never before, never after.
Oh, never after.
Never learn anyone from him.
Yes. But that's the way the church does. I mean, every day.
That is maybe in the Western world. They are living in America, right? But in Sri Lanka, I don't think so. They don't do that way,
No, in the church it does it. In churches.
Churches, yes, of course.
That's Buddhist temples or Buddhist monasteries. We used to have that practice here in Buddhist Maha Vihara. We have stopped that because people now automatically know what to do with their donation. So we at least started with talking about trends and which Buddhism is better, but then now we've gone into challenges.
I think, our topic, it's hard to say whether any tradition is better or worse, but I think there are plus points in these traditions.
I think they can work with synergy. They need to work in synergy. Meditation alone can't be a standalone practice. Sila can't be a standalone. Pujas can't be a standalone. They've all got to work together hand in glove to actually perpetuate the religion.
And also,
liberation.
I think, this is my maybe wild imagination, in future, I think Buddhism will be preserved in the Western world rather than Asian world, I think. they're like going in the trend now, because we seem to gradually lose in touch with our tradition. And then people like who take up meditation, for example, or textual studies in the Western world and other part of the country,
But
who are
they
not...
don't know that meditation cannot be successful to a higher degree without practicing sila, without practicing dana.
That's right.
So you have to let go of other things to calm yourself down. Letting go means dana.
Yeah, I agree with you, but my point is, what I'm trying to say is that the textual studies and intellectual thinking about the tradition will be more and more robust in the Western world. So the influence Buddhism as an intellectual tradition be much more severe in the Western world than the Asian world. I mean, that's what I think in 50 years' time. And
Yeah, actually, Bhante, talking about trends,
yeah,
Buddhist, not just Buddhism, but I think generally in terms of religions, it's already started. The younger generation do not believe in religion.
yeah,
They believe in doing good or bad.
yeah.
You know, it's either that. If I'm a good person, I'm okay. I'm okay in society.
I don't think
need-
so. I don't think that younger generation don't believe in Buddhism. When Chief Reverend, late Chief Reverend speak to young people, they were so excited to learn
Bhante,
something
that was
practical.
20, 25, 30 years ago. I'm talking about now and maybe in 20 years from now.
Even now, what we need is to
that's the
communicate
danger.
the Dharma in an effective way.
Yeah, I think even the current chief mentioned already that there are serious problems that attracting young people to the tradition, and he always think about we have to kind of introduce new methods to attract the young people and keep them coming into temple and so on. I think that's true because Corona time they got used to sit in front of the computer, and now they won't be willing to come to the temple and spend 1 hour.
But I think the Dharma is the most attractive thing
It is.
in the whole universe.
If you take
That
trouble
is-
to study it, and appreciate it.
Eka raso, lona raso, one taste, that is the taste of salt.
Dhamma, yeah.
And only one taste of Dharma.
Yeah.
Once you get that taste, then they want more. So we need to learn how to teach the Dharma effectively to the general audience.
Yeah, I think that's the key word.
And it is not happening that much in the West. So scholarly Buddhism is not going to hold Buddhist practice. So it will be in the libraries.
But the thing is that the rigorous study of Buddhism as an intellectual tradition is very important, because robust study of the practices and that's what feed into popular media. Like
No, it's without theory. Intellectual practice means you are talking about the theory. That is vidya. Theory is equally important as charana, it is the practice. Vidya and charana should go together. Otherwise, intellectual people don't understand what is the meaning of the word tanha. They can give another word. Craving is another word, or greed is another word. But what is the actual meaning of the word tanha? Intellectual people
Venerable Sir, I see it differently. If you compare the East and West, I think the Western people are less materialistic. Like say, for example, Sri Lankan family want to earn for several generations, their children, grandchildren and so on, they accumulate. Whereas Western people say, they go away after 18 years, I don't have to be worried. Like that, they seem to have...
That is good. That is good, because when you are wealthy, when you had experienced everything, and you find out there's nothing more to experience, then they are frustrated and let go.
Yeah.
And they are not attached to their car, they are not attached to their house. But people who don't have anything want more. So that's the difference.
Yeah, but thing is that I think there are positive signs in the Western society to embrace Buddhism. Some of the ideas like detachment, even no selfness in heart.
Not as a Buddhist teaching. They practice non-attachment, but not as a part of the Buddhist teaching.
No labels.
That's a regular understanding.
But thing is it fit into the Buddhist teaching, no? Because we doesn't
If
need
we teach it correctly, yes. Otherwise, if you study Dharma through only theory, you will not get the exact meaning of what the Buddha meant from this concept or this word. They can translate it to another word, but they cannot really explain it. You understand what I'm saying?
There's no tactile feel to the word. Let's say greed, as you mentioned, Bhante. It's just a word, but the feeling, the emotion of greed is not there. So yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we've spent almost an hour discussing.
Okay. So conclusion?
Yeah, conclusion, I would say Western Buddhism has a brighter future and prospect. And I think the Western academy and the practitioners, meditators, will keep this tradition going for another century or longer. And I think Western Buddhism has a potential to elevate Buddhism to a higher level.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante?
That's his conclusion. That's fine.
Your conclusion?
My conclusion is that even Buddhism went to Sri Lanka and other countries, it took long time to be part of the culture, part of the existence of the people. So the same thing will happen in the Western world. That means we need another 500-600 years at least for Buddhism to be rooted in the West.
Yeah.
Until then, we don't have any hope. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Bhante. So you just heard from Bhante Sila Vimala and Professor Mahinda Thera, who are talking about this topic about Eastern and Western Buddhism, and also the challenges that they know of because they come from a Western background. And I think it was a very interesting discourse and discussion and a dialogue that we had. And I think we can expand this series to talk about other subjects in the near future. So with that, we'll conclude. And thank you, Bhantes, for joining us, the Buddhist Maha Vihara's dialogue series, and hope to see you soon. Sadhu.
Thank you. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.